right. So it's officially 10:10. And like I said, I needed to go ahead and record this for myself. So I figured I'd go ahead and just present it here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm trying to test the YouTube Live and just kind of to see how that works and everything. Because I've been doing a lot of video encoding and kind of moving a bunch of files around lately. So what I needed to do was I wanted to present this and put this up on my YouTube channel. But to help kill two birds with one stone, I figured I'd just go ahead and stream it up. So it's something where it'll either be up there where I can go and download it, or it won't be. And I figure if people hop on, great. If not, great. So if you're just tuning in, my name is Ronnie Tokazowski, Senior Threat Researcher with Agari. We do a lot of research on business email compromise and related threats, so we do a lot of work with Nigerian fraud. And one of the things that's related to that is we also do work with romance scams as well. And that's one of the areas I do a lot of work on, and it's something where it really sucks working with them. But I kind of wanted to walk through just different things with the way the romance scams work and with kind of how all this stuff works overlaps with some stuff. So this is what I presented on probably 2 weeks ago at this point. It was a presentation I did with Secret Service and Data Connectors, and it was a webinar and a romance scam symposium, where this was my presentation from there. But I wanted to kind of present it here so that I could kind of have a copy of it public as well, so that people can kind of see how this stuff works. We can have a reference guide to go back and understand all the other intricate things with the romance scam. So that's why I wanted to go ahead and kind of throw it out there. So I'm going to go ahead and officially get this kicked off now that I'm done rambling. This is the presentation called Lessons Learned from Romance Victims. These are the not so fun tales of fighting Nigerian fraud. Again, my name is Ronnie Tokazowski. I'm a Senior Threat Researcher with Agari. I also engage a lot of work with Nigerian fraudsters, and it's something where what we do is we would respond to the emails that they send back and forth. So it's something where if a scammer says, "Hey, are you in the office? I want to go ahead and do a wire transfer," we say, "Yes, we are." In addition to that, I also study romance scams and catfishing, because again, that's something where those things are all related, and they kind of overlap with a bunch of things. With what we see on the Nigerian fraud side. So what I'm going to be covering, some people may know Nigerian fraud as 419 scams. They may know it as Nigerian print scams. But when it comes to tracking all that, that's what they're all related. They're all very much the similar thing. You may see something called advanced fee fraud. That's where they kind of send checks to people. So a lot of that is related as well. I'll be covering romance scams and catfishing and kind of the definitions around that, as well as breaking the stigmas associated with that. I'll also talk about some victim psychology and kind of the observations along with that. I'll also be sharing 4 romance scam stories. They're not fun. They absolutely suck to talk about, but it's something where this is just how the stuff works. So I'll be kind of going through that. And again, I'll be talking on, is your family member a victim, and kind of what to do in that case where you have a family member who has been socially engineered into doing different things for your scammers. Then after that, I'll kind of give a closing to kind of help close everything out to make sure that everything is all good to go. So I'm going to give a friendly disclaimer now. These are a lot of hard topics I'll be covering. So these are all true stories and insights, no matter how crazy they may seem. BEC isn't fun. 419 is not really sexy. It's not a fun thing to work. And the current status is very bad with a lot of the way this stuff works. I'm going to be covering some very difficult topics. So it's something where if I'll be covering topics such as depression, suicide, death, psychology. So it's something where if those are topics that are sensitive to you, unfortunately, I'll be digging a deep dive into them and kind of talk about how they relate back and forth with the Nigerian fraud. If you're sensitive to stuff like that, this is your warning now. So let's go ahead and start into it and kind of talk about what is this thing here? Where did I kind of get my start on this? How does all this stuff track back and forth to each other? So when it comes to email attacks, one of the popular email attacks that we see targeting the industries across the world is called business email compromise. And what that is that's a way that a scammer will send an email and they'll say, "Hey, I need you to do this wire transfer for me." And they'll usually target their CFO or the chief financial officer in order to do some type of wire transfer and say, "Hey, I need you to send money from here to here. It's this important business transaction. Can you go ahead and do that?" And in that conversation back and forth, the scammer pretends to actually be someone in authority at the company. So when they send that email back and forth, they actually did the research and to say, "Hey, I know who I'm looking for within that company." So once that email goes back and forth, there's other types of attacks that they could do as well. So they may say, hey, I need you to go and do a purchase order for me. Can you send me some gift cards? Can you pay this vendor for me? But with a lot of the way these emails work, what it comes down to is they pretend to be somebody in authority and try and ask for a wire transfer, a gift card, or something financial for you to do. But most of the time, it actually ties back to a scammer and actually isn't the exact person that is behind that. BEC, or Business Email Compromise, is very new to the world. It's something where it initially kind of started off, it started early on 2013, but really kicked off in 2015. But before that, we had 419 crime, or 419 fraud, aka Nigerian print scams. And what a Nigerian print scam is that age-old thing that we've heard forever. Hey, I'm this Nigerian prince. You have inherited $400 million, and in order to go and receive this money, then I need you to go ahead and send me $5,000. And once you send me that $5,000, then I can kind of go ahead and take that money and then use that money in order to go and buy this business thing over here. And then once I get that, then I can go ahead and then you'll be able to receive your money. Everything will be happy and hunky-dory. But it's something where once that person sends that money, then something else is going to come up. Oh, well, we got to pay this officer, that officer, this thing got caught up here. And that's kind of how a lot of your 419 crime and your Nigerian print scams work, is they extract as much money as they can slowly over time by giving fake stories to their victims. And as they tell them these different stories, your victim gets very much entranced in that. And they kind of keep staying in that they keep giving the money back to the scammer, because again, they actually think that they're in a relationship. I'll be coming back to that here in a little bit. So when it comes to tracking this type of crime, there's a lot of other things that overlap with it too. You have cases where romance scams, again, tie back directly to this type of stuff. I'll be going in depth in romance scams and romance victims and kind of talking about how they overlap with this type of fraud here in a minute. You have wire fraud that's related to this, where someone says, hey, can you do this wire transfer for me? There's money that's lost there. We've seen cases where they'll go on compromising email accounts, where they'll do reshipping scams in order to try and get somebody to that they can take money from. So in the reshipping scam, for example, they'll say, hey, you're going to go ahead and receive this package, put a new label on it, and ship it somewhere else, which those shoes or whatever that they're packaging would have come from another person. They would have been sent to them from another victim. And that's kind of how they work, is they make these networks of mules going back and forth. The other thing too is a lot of these lines now start to get blurry, because we've also seen them doing Craigslist scams, or where they'll send fake checks to somebody because they purchased somebody. Check fraud is something that we've seen that's been very popular with them too. We've also seen cases where mystery shopper scams, drug trafficking, work from home scams, fake checks to escorts. I mean, we've seen it all. It's something where it's very fascinating just how many different types of crime that these actors relate back to. And it's just absolutely fascinating seeing how many different types of crime that we track as individual things, but are actually related back to the same Nigerian crime, the same similar tactics and tools, tactics, and procedures of Nigerian crime. Again, Nigerian crime and the way that works is very different than like your crime where actors. But again, we'll cover that if people are interested. So let's go ahead and take a dive into romance scams and see where exactly that plays in. So what a romance scam or a catfishing scam is it's when people go to a dating website based on their interests. So they may say, hey, I'm trying to find somebody at Christian Mingle, or I'm trying to find somebody at Farmers Dating in order to go ahead and date, in order to date. And what they'll do is they'll go ahead and try and find somebody and have this relationship and say, hey, I'm looking for this person, I'm looking for a long relationship, and they on the other end they go, yeah, I'm here too, I'm looking for the same thing. And that's how they meet, and that's what they look for. So a lot of your victims who go on these websites, they're already kind of lonely and looking for somebody to love them. And that's where attackers take advantage of that, is they have these long bodies of text that they call scripts and formats that they can kind of copy paste back and forth to their victims. And what they'll do is they'll copy paste from like one side and then send it to their victim. And it gives all of these loving things, just that they can go ahead and say that they love their person. And in addition to that, they also have pictures that they'll send. They'll message them over the phone number. They'll have phone calls with them. So to your victim, The problem is that they don't realize that it's actually a scam, because from their perspective, everything that they're seeing is legitimate. So in their mind, it becomes very difficult for them to kind of see through a lot of these things. And it's something where I talk with a lot of people, talk about romance scams, and I hear one of the main things that comes up is like, romance scams are stupid, they're dumb. It's like, no, it's not the case. In working with many of these victims, it's something where anybody can be a victim to this stuff. And when somebody is very lonely and emotionally invested, it becomes very difficult for them to kind of see the truth behind what they're doing. And it's something where, again, since the scammers have dozens of pictures ready at their disposal, it's something where reverse image search doesn't always work. So there may be cases where if you go and search on Google to see if that picture had been uploaded, you may not find it, because again, it may be something where that account may not have been identified as being used for fraud. And again, one of the things that a lot of these victims have in common is they're constantly looking for like a godly soulmate. They tend to be very religious and kind of very much have that mindset of eternal love and long-lasting love. So when they go and find somebody, it hits them that much harder. It's that much harder to kind of break them out of that. So as that goes on and as that relationship goes on, your scammer will use your victim for different types of crime. So for example, the scammer will call your victim a client, or a client rather, to help legitimize what they're doing to that victim. Because again, from the scammer's words, using the word victim is a dirty word, so they don't like having people call the victim in that regard. So they always try to avoid using that terminology. But with your romance victim, your scammer will steal as much money as they can from them. And what they'll do is they'll be like, oh, hey, I have this really great business opportunity. I'm a soldier overseas. I am just trying to look for love. And they'll tell these really good, sappy stories in order to try and make it seem that the person who's across the way, such as like overseas, can't come back to visit the victim here in the United States. So with a lot of the victims, there's always a story that they tell to make it seem like, oh, we're farther away, we can't see each other, but we will eventually see each other sometime. And that's one of the common themes that a lot of these scams have, especially with the romance victim. And once that romance victim has been indoctrinated, then your scammer can use them for whatever they want. They can say, hey, I need you to go and open this bank account. Hey, I need you to receive this check. And they'll do it. And that's where your romance scams, or where your romance victims will start being enticed and pulled into that. And this is where it starts to get difficult, is because once they get pulled into that and once they're doing that, it almost becomes too late, where they can't see through it and they're already in it because they've lost so much money. I mentioned earlier a romance script, and this is one example of one where the scammer would have this and they would say, hey, I'm going to tell you these beautiful things. Hi, beautiful. How are you today? I'm Larry, 62 and widowed, have 3 kids. And this would get sent back and forth to the victim. And the victim wouldn't know it, because again, your scammer has this all ready to go. And this was one of the pictures that they were using. So I have no idea who that is, and I'm sorry if I'm sharing his picture and stuff, but it's something where these are the things in the content and from actual attacks that your scammers will use in order to try and socially engineer your victims. And for a lot of your victims and working with them, many of them start as they're single, they're divorced or widowed, and emotionally many of them really know what it's like to lose somebody. And as humans, that's a very difficult emotion for us to cope with. And it's something where we want to avoid those painful experiences. And it's something where if we go through an extremely traumatic experience, our minds will actually lie to us in order to keep us away from that harmful experience. So for example, if a romance victim knows that they've been victimized, they will be hesitant to accept that, because it's something where in their minds, they know that accepting that reality that they were scammed is going to be extremely painful than staying in this fantasy world where they think and believe that they're actually in this relationship. And it becomes an more emotional struggle for them to understand those two things. And because, again, your body will actually fight that, it becomes really hard for a lot of these victims. And it's something where even when you go and talk with the victims, if you're trying to say, hey, I'm with law enforcement, you stole a check and want to know the information with that, your victim will look you straight in the eye, have zero facial changes or micro expressions that to signify they're lying. They'll look you straight in the eye and they'll be like, "No, I have no idea what you're talking about. It was for the inheritance from my girlfriend." Because to them, they truly and utterly believe that they're in this relationship, and that's why it becomes very hard working with a lot of these victims. Is because it's something where once you go and talk with them, their reality is completely different from what's being perceived in the outside world. So it becomes really hard trying to talk with them and work with them. In addition, it's something where when you look at a romance scam and you look at the emotions that go along with that, it's an extremely traumatic experience. And that's again, as I mentioned earlier, when you ask them why they're committing fraud, they won't be able to tell you because to them, again, they're in a relationship. And it's something where when it comes to working with one of these victims, a lot of people will get so upset with a family member who's being in this, and they'll be like, "Why are you being so dumb? You know you shouldn't have been doing this. You know you shouldn't have been sending that money." And it's something where that's the absolute worst thing to do because they'll just shut down. They won't talk to you. They won't say anything. They'll just straight up shut down on you. And it's something where they know that you don't believe them. That's what they see and that's what's been happening to them. So it's something where they now have to face that reality that they're being lied to. So again, it comes extremely difficult for them to be able to see that, and it becomes very much a big struggle for that. Again, facing the reality of being a romance victim is extremely traumatic because, again, some of these victims are hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, millions of dollars in debt, lost their home, lost their family, lost their kids, are now on the hook and have the cops after them, and they have no idea what happened. And that's the unfortunate truth of a lot of this, is that when you go and actually talk with a lot of victims, they have no idea what's going on. It's in their mind. They just can't rationalize that, oh, I was scammed, and then have all this other stuff going on. But that's the problem right now is with a lot of romance victims. They aren't treated like trauma victims, and they're very much estranged from families. They're like, "Oh, you're dumb. You shouldn't have been doing this." But it's something where, again, they actually, truly, and utterly believed that they were part of that. And it was something where there was a really good study from Monica Whitty and Tom Buchanan. I'm sorry if I butchered y'all's name on that. Where they were talking about the psychology or the psychological impact on victims, and kind of talking through some of the attributes that they had and that they saw and that they observed in victims. And they sat down and spoke with many victims. It was something where one of the constant things and constant analogies that they kept finding was that a lot of the victims become depressed and lonely and suicidal. And in addition to that, they exhibit the same physical and psychological damage as a rape victim. And in one case, one of the people who was actually talking with them, one of the victims, said, "I feel like I was mentally raped." And it's something where when you have a scammer on the other end telling you this complete lie and this farce, and is playing up on your emotions and trying to telling you these absolutely loving things, that you're now deep down like, "Oh my God, I love this person. I'm gonna go and absolutely marry them. I can't wait till we go together." What that gets taken away is like, nope, that was absolutely wrong, and somebody went and lied to you after you go and look for love. That's devastating. And it's something where, again, it's the only analogy I've been able to think of to actually describe that sensation is that a lot of your victims have almost this tiny world in their heads, and they have this tiny world of how they perceive the world that goes along with talking through crap, totally just lost my train of thought right there. But they have this tiny piece of the world where they believe is everything that goes on with the relationship that they have. And it's something where they may have this memory of like this really loving relationship, these really good things. And when you go and say that, no, you're not in this relationship, it's almost like you're ripping that chunk of reality out of their head. And again, it's the only analogy I can think of to actually describe that. But it's something where, again, that's the level of trauma that these victims go through. And it's something where people just don't realize that when it comes to working with them. So I'm going to go ahead and walk through a couple case studies that we've seen of victims that we've worked with or identified or seen as part of this crime as related to some of our research that we've done. So the first case study was a male in the relationship. They were in the relationship for about 3 years, from what I remember. And in that relationship, the scammer had the victim trying to cash checks, and one of the checks that he had received was for $16,000 from a vendor up in the state. So when that organization, and that what happened was with that organization, they were scammed from a different type of scam where they were said, hey, go ahead and send this check down. So essentially they were scammed through like a business email compromise attack, and then were told to go and send that check. So what they did, or what the actors did, was they had went to the vendor to say, hey, I need you to wire this out for me, or I need you to send the check in this person's name, which was the name of the victim. I need you to send that to this his assistant over here. His assistant was a work from home victim that ended up forwarding the check over to the person in Texas. And so now at that point you have the victim, the work from home victim, and then this victim here, who was the person here in Texas that we talk about. Again, each line change a different state. So once that victim had the check, they went to go deposit it into the bank account. When they went to go deposit it, it took several days for the bank to go ahead and verify it. So it was 10 days, and it went for like an extra day of verification. And what the victim was told was that from his lover, he's like, oh, this is for my inheritance. She was saying that it's for her inheritance, and go ahead and cash this. So you can go ahead and pay this person over here. Once you pay this person over here, then my inheritance will be unlocked and we'll be able to live happily ever after. And this relationship went on for about 2.5 years. So once he deposited that check and got that and got the money out, it was something where the scammer actually told the victim, hey, I need you to go and send that to a Bitcoin ATM. But with this victim, it was something where he didn't do that because the Bitcoin ATM was too far away, so he didn't have the gas in his car to get back down that far. But it was something where it becomes the scammer, or so getting tongue tied and losing my train of thought again. So with the scammer told the victim to go ahead and, since he couldn't use it through Bitcoin, to then send that out through cash in a FedEx box. And what you see here is actually the FedEx box from that the victim took a picture of to send to the scammer or his girlfriend that he thought he was in a relationship with. And when he sent that, he was like, hey, here's the box and here's your money. And he put $15,000 cash and sent it off to a fourth state. And that's one of the things that becomes very difficult with tracking a lot of this crime, is that when you go and try and see how this works, it's something where there are so many states that get crossed, it becomes very difficult for law enforcement to actually fight that and to understand the jurisdictions associated with that. So case study number 2 was a female victim. When we were looking at her information, we had no idea how long they were in a relationship. It was very difficult for us to see. But what had happened was that the romance victim was purchasing gift cards for the person that she thought she was in a relationship with. And it eventually got to a point where she was very paranoid, she was delusional, she thought somebody was after her. And eventually she attempted to commit suicide. And after she attempted to commit suicide, I think it was something like 28 days, if I remember right, from the data gap. But after that time period, she responded back to the scammer, aka who she thought she was in a relationship with, and she was like, I just tried to commit suicide. My mother had me committed, and in doing that, it was something where I told them everything about you, and they found out they found out all about you. And it was something where she's like, I was worried about people finding out about you because it was something where she wanted to hide the relationship for whatever reason because she was wiring money. So the scammer came back and was like, I'm real, I'm always real. And ended up sending fake pictures to her even after it was identified that this was actually a scammer. So it was something where, again, your victim gets put in this really weird scenario where they're trying to piece everything together and don't really have the full picture. It becomes difficult for them to see through it. And again, with this victim, it went to the extent of suicide or attempted suicide, and the scammer still tried to engage back and forth with her. And again, these scammers are ruthless and they'll go as far as they can in order to make their money. So again, it's very heartbreaking with a lot of these things. Had another case study. This was at a small security convention called Black Hat. This was actually from the before 4 times where we used to meet up and go have drinks at these different conferences and do all those fun things. But I got in 2019 at Black Hat. I actually hopped into an Uber. I was going back and forth from one venue to another. And in hopping back in there, I actually got to talking with the person who was driving. And I told her, I was like, what I do. I said, yeah, I do some work with romance victims out here. It's a security conference. Kind of explain some of the stuff that goes on. So she's like, well, it's funny that you're in the Uber with me, because she's like, I'm a romance victim. And I'm like, tell me your story. And she's like, okay, I'll tell you my story. And she started telling me her story. So for her, it was something where she was involved in a relationship for over 10 years. And in total, she ended up losing over $1 million. She lost her business, lost her family, lost her house, and lost her husband. And initially, before it eventually turned into a romance relationship or a romantic relationship, but before it was a romantic relationship, it was actually a business relationship. And she was trying to grow her business, go to other parts of the world, found somebody in Nigeria that she could work with, and ended up getting scammed out of that, and all of her money over that time period. And the reason that she was an Uber driver was because her credit was absolutely shot and no one would let her borrow money. And she was victimized. And it was something where I asked her, I'm like, okay, what was so enticing for you to stay in that? And it was something where she kind of got really quiet and really sad. And you could tell it was a hurtful question. And I didn't mean to hurt her on that. But she said that for her, it was something where her husband was always abusive to her. And it was something where she was like, I just wanted to be loved, and I wanted somebody to show me love. And that person on the other end was showing me the love. And that's why she ended up staying in that relationship, was because she just wanted to be loved on that. And that was her big reason for that. Again, 10 years and over $1 million for that victim. Again, that's 10 years of fraud that the scammers would be using and abusing her in order to take stuff. And again, I wish I could say this was the first time I've heard 10 years, but no, I've worked with other victims too, and seen other stories where it's been just as long in a lot of these cases. Case study number 4, this was also an odd one. We didn't really have the whole story of this, but it was something where we were able to see the bits and pieces of the victim and whatnot. What I mean by that, the way we were able to collect her information, we saw some chat back and forth with the password, so we knew what her passwords were over time. And initially, her password started as very loving, forever love you, strong for you. And eventually it started to get to other places like we are forever, two hearts of one love. So it's like we knew she was she was in it for the love and everything. But unfortunately, there was starting to be a degradation in her passwords, so it became things like too tired for this, too much mystery. And again, the last instance or the last communication that we saw between her and the scammer was about a month prior to her death. And at that point, the last thing that they had received was her IRA information, so the information that they need in order to cash out her retirement. And it's something we didn't have the evidence that they had cashed that out, but from everything that we saw, it very much looked like that's what had happened. And unfortunately, she had passed away a month later, after that had occurred, where what we think might have happened. Again, we don't have any information on that, but that's what we believe had happened. And normally you would think, okay, death is the end of the story for Jane, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. A month after she passed away, the scammers used her information to go and file for car loans and auto loans and other things like that. And to give you a little bit of a background on who Jane was, per her obituary, she was a stay-at-home mom. She liked homeschooling 3 kids. Very much loved spending time with the grandkids. She had a big family who it sounded like growing up. Don't know where her husband was, but the kids had kind of lived and moved to other parts of the country. So something where her family, where she had a lot of people growing up, but everybody had kind of moved and left away, and almost like you have that empty nest syndrome. That when you have people when you have the parts of the family moving away. And again, that's kind of a couple of the stories that I've had when working with romance victims that we've seen. It sucks when you go and try and work with a romance victim. And it's very difficult both for you being in there trying to help them out or trying to work with it, and on the other case for them where they've been completely abused in a lot of these things. So it's something where, again, what you have to do is you have to kind of try and meet them in the middle in order to kind of work with them and kind of work backwards from that. So in order to work with friends and family who may be in this, I want to put this big disclaimer out there. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a lawyer. I want no responsibility for this information, but so use it at your own risk and yada, yada, yada. Hopefully my point's been made. But the first thing you want to do with a victim is you do not want to be confrontational. You do not want to be abrasive with them, because it's very difficult for them to work with this situation mentally, and it becomes something where they're trying to figure out in their heads just how this stuff works. They don't really get how a lot of that stuff is going. So again, if you go and try and yell at them and become confrontational, they'll straight up shut down, and it's something where they won't talk to you on that. The best thing you want to do is you want to try and be kind and compassionate, and you want to listen to that victim, because the way that they perceive the world is different than how you perceive the world. So it's something where, unless you're able to start working with them and realizing, okay, yes, you were in this, you sent this person this check, but on my side, it was something where you could say that you saw it and it was reported by the bank, and kind of work those pieces back like that. And that may be one way to kind of help start them walking their thoughts back to realize, oh, hey, this is something where this did happen. Some family members will actually limit the spending for family members. Me personally, I don't like this idea, because again, when it comes to this behavior, you're still facilitating it. You're still making it to where people are going to continue doing this. So it's something where you're still kind of enabling the fraud to happen. And then with a lot of your victims, they're used in many, many other things. Again, they can be used to launder money. There's been cases where they've been used to traffic drugs from one country to another. There's been cases where they've been left on the side of the road in foreign countries and left with absolutely nothing to do. So it becomes really, really difficult, and you want to try and get them out as soon as you can. So what you want to do is, for your lonely family members, try and do something with them. Try to involve them in things. Find them a hobby or a group or something for your lonely family member. And it's something where, with a lot of these victims, the unfortunate truth is depression, anxiety, isolation, suicide are very much real problems with this. And it's something where, once your victims have lost everything, realize that they've been abused to the absolute nth degree on this, it becomes very difficult for them to work through that. And what they'll do is they may become suicidal, and that they may decide to take their life. And again, that's the unfortunate truth on some of this. So if you do not hesitate to get professional help, if you have a family member who is being suicidal or showing those signs, that you need to go ahead and work with them. So don't hesitate to get professional help. When it comes to trying to figure whose responsibility this is, why it's something that other people should focus on this. When it comes to romance victims, they're very much kind of that money mule network that moves your money back and forth. And with a lot of those victims, they're the ones who's facilitating a lot of this fraud. It's something where a lot of the victims who are doing that, they will move your money. And what I mean by that is, you have cases where unemployment fraud is at an all-time high. I think we're up to like almost $200 billion has been stolen since 2020. But with that, it's something where a lot of those scammers will use those victims as that money mule network to go and send fake information from your account to go to the victim. And once it goes to the victim, either the victim will usually receive the money from that. So when a scammer uses your information to file for unemployment, that check and that information and that money goes over to the romance victim. And again, sorry, it's just very convoluted with how this stuff works, because again, there's so many intricate pieces with it. It becomes very much a web of crap with how this stuff overlaps. But again, your romance victims are very much that money mule network for your scammers in order for them to move things back and forth. And again, ignoring a romance victim is very similar to ignoring an IP address in a malware attack, because again, that's the infrastructure that's being used for that. So with a malware attack, how you have the IP addresses, your victims are the ones who push the stuff, who move the accounts, who send the money from this place to that place. And whenever they go and hit you with a business email compromise attack, more times than not, that's a romance victim or some other money mule who's being used to move that money from your attack. So there's a good chance that they're being involved. And it's something where, when you actually work with these, and in information security, we see all these attacks. So it's something where there may be a case where if you can go and tip off law enforcement, you can literally save a life, because that's one less victim that's in this scheme committing these crimes. And again, it's something where it comes to business email compromise, when it comes to 419 fraud, when it comes to Nigerian fraud, Cameroonian fraud, a lot of these things would look very different if romance victims and mule networks were not in the picture. So it's something where you want to keep that in mind, that a lot of those things look very, very different. And my thingy-ding-clickety, here we go. So when it comes to working with this, how do you keep your company safe? It's something where your CEO will never ask you, "Hey, can you go ahead and go get me this gift card for my niece or nephew?" And if they do, tell that CEO to go get off their butt and go get it themselves. It's something where that's not regular company policy, or in most places where I've been, your boss wouldn't tell you to do that. So it's something where that's the story that the scammers will tell, is to say, "Hey, I need you to go ahead and do this," or "We're doing something for the employees. Can you go ahead and go pick up this card for me?" There's also been cases where they will try and divert payroll. And when they go and divert payroll, they may say, "Hey, I'm this employee. I want to update my payroll to this green dot card." And in some cases, when you have to change payroll, more times than not, there's a payroll system that you log into in order to change that information. But if you have to email somebody, make sure that you call them back and that you're actually talking to that person on the other end. And don't call the phone number that's on the bottom of that first email. Call a previously known number, because scammers will actually either forge that number or modify that number to make it seem very legitimate and within the real area codes. Like, I had one instance where the last digit was a 5, but the regular number was like a 7. And it was something where, like, when the scammer launched that attack, it's like that was the only difference. So they knew what they were looking at. They knew how to forge that document. And that's, if I remember, I think that specific case was for over, or attempt was over $400,000. So it's something where scammers will do all of that in order to push those attacks through, and because they are very tricky on a lot of these things, and these attacks are successful for a reason. And it's because you don't have to be very tech savvy in order to launch a successful attack. And it's something where that's what people need to realize, is that yes, these actors are less tech savvy, but they're the ones who are causing the most damage. And when you look at statistics coming out of IC3, when you look at organizations posting numbers and statistics on emails, business email compromise is the number one. It's like, that's where it is. But things like ransomware get the headlines because it's big and scary. And people who are doing ransomware is assholes. So screw you guys if you're watching this. And again, the other thing too, if something makes you feel anxious or nervous, like, "Oh, I have to go and do this thing now," more times than not, that email that you're receiving that gave you that emotional response, that's not something that needs to be responded to. And just take a step back, because again, scammers use those emotions to make it seem like more enticing, to where, "Oh, I need to click this link," or, "Oh, I need to respond to this now," or, "Oh, I need to do this urgent wire transfer." They play up on those emotions in order to try and get you to be more enticed in order to click on those things. And again, it's something where at the end of the day, never be afraid to ask. I know for me, I'm absolutely horrible at trying to asking for help. But it's something where you need not to be scared on doing that. And it's something where if you think you're a victim, if you know somebody's a victim, and you want to get them out, ask for help. The best place to do that is looking at the Internet Crime Complaint Center, IC3, which is a sect of the FBI that does a lot of this reporting back and forth, and they track all these crimes. So they have the information that they can use to go and work with banks, financial institutions, in order to work with this crime and kind of understand how all this works and overlaps. So if you have a problem, if you think somebody's been victimized, work with IC3, get them out of it, try and work back and forth with them in order to get that going. So that is it in my presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below, and I will see you all later. Thanks. Take care. Whew. And that's the end of the presentation. So I see one more person on there. If you're the one person who watched that all the way through, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great and wonderful day, and I will see y'all later at some point. Needed to get that in my last slide for the video. Alright, take care, y'all.